Hey everyone, I just recently learned that you can make curve cuts on the table saw. That ain't right. Nah, I can't what? So I wanted to take you along, show you everything I've learned, that way you can do it too. Now I'm super excited to show you this technique, but I gotta remind you, a table saw by itself is extremely dangerous, especially just doing regular rip cuts. So what I'm about to do is actually going to amplify that danger, so you need to be very, very careful. Our first step is to make sure the table saw is turned off and unplugged so there's no accidents while we're setting it up. Depending on your table saw, you either have a riving knife or maybe some kind of a dust collection that goes over the blade. In any case, we need to remove this now. I then raise the blade up to as high as it'll go, and I'm going to take a ruler here and just get a rough estimate of the full width that is above the saw. In other words, what the actual cutting distance is, because we want to find the center of this. And once I do that, I just made a little mark on the top of my table saw so I know where that is. Then let's lower the blade down to just below the surface. Then we need a long straight surface because we're going to make our own fence. We want to lay the new fence on the saw and turn it just slightly in relation to the blade, but also keep in consideration where your center marks are. Once we figure out the angle of our new fence, it's extremely important that we clamp down both ends of that fence so it doesn't move at all. And when you're clamping, make sure you put it on the opposite side of where the blade is, otherwise that can cause even bigger problems. For our first cut, we want to raise the blade to about a 1/16 of an inch. And with everything set up, we can now turn the saw back on. For this test, I'm going to be using some plywood so you can see the layers and exactly how it cuts it out. It should be a little bit easier to see. But you can use plywood, solid wood, hardwood, softwood, whatever you'd like. Just make sure you wear your personal protective gear so you don't get hurt. Now there's the first cut. It's not real deep as you can see, but it kind of gives you an idea how we're starting out. It's time to raise the blade again. I want to do it about another 1/16 of an inch so I don't cut too much material at one time. Now your table saw probably will vary a little bit from mine, so just make sure you adjust it accordingly. Now let's repeat that process several more times. Let's take a little bit closer look at this. You can see the different layers within the cut. And if we look here on the end, it looks almost like a real steep rainbow. But overall, that right there is a curved cut on the table saw. Now of course, it might take some sanding, but that is really cool. I still get a smile on my face thinking about this. We just cut a curve into a piece of wood on a saw that normally is only supposed to cut straight lines. That is so cool. Alright, now I've been told that I can change the width, make it wider of this arch by changing the angle of our fence. So let's give that a try. I'm sure you can measure this out for exact angles to get it exactly the size you want, but I think I'm going to freehand it and put it about there. We're going to use the same board, but we're going to flip it over to cut it into this opposite side so we can hopefully not hit that previous cut. Wow, that is a much nicer cut. And compared to our first cut, it is much wider as well. As excited as I am to show you this, I do have to give you an extreme word of caution. When I was making both of these cuts in this board, the board tried to wiggle around on me as it went through the blade. If I didn't have a nice good grip with my push block, this could have easily shot back and hit me, or at the very least go flying across my workshop and hurt or break something. So please, if you're going to do this, make sure you have extreme control of what you're doing and be very, very careful. Now while I was making these cuts, it got me thinking, what would happen if we keep everything the same except we tilt the blade a little bit? I wonder what that would look like. Let's give it a shot. Look at this, it is so cool. This is the second cut, the wider one, and this is the one with the angle on it. And I don't know what you call it. It looks almost like a upside down wave. I mean, I guess if you flipped it up like that, it looks almost like a, yeah, that's cool. And just in case you were wondering, this wave looking one was done at a 45-degree angle. Now, I felt like I had a little bit more control with this setup than I did with the others. I believe because the blade was kind of tilted toward the fence, but it still tried to move around on me a little bit. So please be careful. So what can we use this technique for? Well, possibly making some of your own trim. But I wouldn't suggest doing it in any really long spans, because even though these look really cool, we're still going to need some sanding going on in each of these curves just to kind of smooth everything out. Because even though it is pretty well done, considering it came off the table saw, it still has a little bit of roughness to it that needs to be cleaned up. I went back and played a little bit more with this and see what I could do, maybe with cross cuts. And these are some little coaster type pieces of wood. They're just plywood, and these are really cool little cross cuts. Now I did flare up a little bit, maybe some of the grain popped up and you have to sand it back down, but you can get some really cool looking designs from this, especially with plywood, because all those little layers pop. Now I hope you can use this technique in some of your future projects, but I can't say this enough. A table saw is very dangerous and can hurt you very quickly, very badly. So please take all the precautions you can, especially when you're doing something like this, which is using a table saw for something it was never designed for. But overall, please be careful in the shop. And if you enjoyed this project, you may want to check out this one.